the assistance of every single partner, we have reached a level where we can claim that we have managed to meet our goals and objectives, and more or less do what we were supposed to do without the pandemic in this project, despite all these problems and against all odds. So I welcome you to this final event of the Captain. We will show what we have achieved in this project, but also share experiences with other coaching problems that have been funded by the same scheme of the European Commission. And with these few words, I would like to say thank you for joining into this event. And I would like to ask our project officer, Dr. Christoph Klein, from the European Commission, who is a policy officer and a principal administrator for the international cooperation now. Christoph, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today. The floor is yours to say a few words.
Thank you, Professor Bamidis, dear colleagues, Panos, also for the close cooperation always during these hard times. It's a pleasure to see this event happening. This was, as you said, not normal tough, and still many of us researchers, we managed to find our ways, to cooperate, to still stay in tune and achieve things despite all odds. So I'm proud of this, and I'm very curious to see today's event. Certainly we will have a further catch up now during the next weeks, and a real pleasure to welcome everyone also on this important topic. I mean, we talk here about smart living, about a cluster of projects which are also collaborating. So it's a pleasure to seeing this research happening and delivering. Thanks so much already in advance, and I hope we will have, and I'm sure we will have a great afternoon with many things and many interesting presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Of course, needless to say that your support during. So as per the agenda, we will start with the achievements of the Captain project and the main outcomes and the expected benefits for the end users of the project. And I therefore invite the Captain Technical Coordinator and the main driver of this project, Dr. Evdokimos Konstantinidis, who has been acting with all his power and resources on technically managing and scientifically managing these problems in the various developments and circumstances. A big thanks to you, Evdokimos, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I will start. Actually, my idea is to present the Captain story, but in a way that gives the content, so then all the partners can focus more on technical or scientific results on the methodology and the approaches that were followed. I was quite excited while I was preparing this presentation, so I hope you have the same feeling at the end, although it's a short one. So the vision is to improve the adoption of technology by people in need of care by reshaping the ways of interaction. And our mission, the Captain mission, is to turn the homes of older adults into gentle coaches within an empowering space, providing intuitive interaction, guidance, and help for independent living whenever and wherever it is needed, leading to physical, cognitive, mental, and social well-being. So 3-4 years ago, we started with the idea of turning the people's homes, the future homes actually, of people in gentle coaches. Quite a crazy idea, but then we found out that the consortium, we could find a consortium that had this expertise. So as you can see, we found a lot of technical partners, partners with technical expertise, partners with scientific expertise, and also living labs. And we came up with 3 main outcomes, let's say, or deliverables now. One was based on actually what the call was asking for. One is the radically new ICT technology for empowering and motivating people. The second was users should be involved and drive the innovation at all the stages of the design and development. And the final one was the launch of a new company based on the Captain in order to exploit the results. So on the first aspect, the users should be involved and drive the innovation at all stages of design. We managed to come up with an approach actually that involves the users and fills the gap of having pilot and technical scientific or pilot partners and technical partners in different countries, working especially during this pandemic, which at the end found very useful, the approach that we followed, the agile approach, working on a topic that was very, very challenging. So we came up with a methodology. We involved also in our advisory board people with strong expertise in co-creating and engaging people in user design, and we managed to have our community of stakeholders. So the impact of this actually is that we have managed to create a collaboration and research community for independent living, which actually is kind of self-sustainable now and engaged in many different projects and eager for many projects actually. We managed to receive the Best Living Lab Project Award by Enol as a Captain methodology. And one of the achievements that makes us proud is that the Captain methodology was mentioned in a proposal that actually now is a project, 10 Million Horizon project, as Captain methodology. So we are very, on one hand, proud of it, and on the other hand, we feel responsible that apart from the work that we have done, the methodology we should keep improving. The next item was the radically new ICT-based concepts for empowering people in need of guidance and care. So the idea was that we will use hardware, and hardware is very, very challenging. And this can be also identified or revealed how challenging it is in the next session, where we have the company actually, because every time we pitch the idea of hardware, it's very, very difficult because of scaling up challenges and difficulties. But as a consortium, we thought that it would be really radically new to rely or actually to work on a new hardware. In the beginning, we had in mind to use existing device like the Mentoraz device or a custom device that was projecting in 3D perspective. But at the end, after many discussions, problems, opportunities that we identified, we came up with our own device, which is composed of a Raspberry, a Pico projector, and some other electronics, embedded software components, and you can see on the right the final system. And what it does is actually it senses, interacts with a user by detecting users, by using speech to text or text to speech. It does some AI analysis on many different aspects, identifying the user, if the user is the right user in order to provide the right intervention, and then intervenes with the projection. The challenge was not that we moved to hardware. The challenge was, and especially after the first review that we had with the Commission, that we managed to embed all the AI analysis in the device in order to be as GDPR compliant as possible. So avoiding using external services. So the device actually, it's the one hosting the AI processing rather than delivering online services. And then we were ready for the pilots in real homes, but suddenly we found out that COVID-19 disrupted our plans, or actually not disrupting, but creating some new opportunities. So the last year of the pandemic, we focused more on making the deployment of the devices really plug and play, very, very easy. Instead of having a person in a home deploying the device, installing the device and visiting the home 10 times in a week, which is actually our experience from previous research and innovation action projects, we found ways in order to make the deployment as simple as plugging the device and that's it. And this made us also move closer to product. And this was achieved actually. The technical partners invested more effort in creating all these services and components in order to have this user experience. Of course, the drawback of the COVID-19 is the uncertainty that we had for the pilots until 2 months ago. The evaluation protocols need to be substantially amended due to this uncertainty of the pilots. And also the scientific publication without results was not an option. And then we had to launch a new company, which was actually a milestone. So the first thing that we've done was to discuss with the partners in order to find agreements, agreements in intellectual property rights, and establish the company, which we achieved. And then 2 months ago, we managed to enter pilots' homes, and this way we're happy. Of course, a lot of effort on supporting remotely and through desktop sharing and such tools in order to support the participants as much as possible. But at the end, we think that we got some nice feedback and some nice results that will be presented later. Here so you can see some photos from the deployments. And that's all from my side. Unless you have some questions, Despina will discuss more on the technical points of the system.
Thank you very much, Evdokimos. Are there any questions? I don't know if there's any chat. No. Any questions from anyone? Any comments? If not, we can go to the second part of this technological presentations of the project with our colleague Despina Petsani, who was coordinating all the living lab activities as a research assistant and the PhD student at our laboratory. So Despina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope that you can see my screen and that you can also hear me. Okay, so I'm Despina Petsani, and I'm going to dig deeper in the technology of the Captain. So actually present what Captain can do. Captain has a lot of AI and modeling components like movement analysis, emotion analysis, speech analysis, user modeling, environmental monitoring, and also AI behavior monitoring. And also Captain provides various interfaces and user interaction components like voice interaction, projections, tangible interfaces, and also augmented reality interfaces. So what Captain can do actually, Captain can detect your position inside the house and your posture. So for example, if you're sitting, standing, or laying down. And how Captain can do that? Captain can do that basically through the satellite detector, which is based on the Mentoran's device, which detects a 3D depth image, as you can see in the screen, but also detects and recognizes the skeleton of the user in order to understand what are the movements that the user is doing. So laying down or raising a hand, etc. But also Captain can recognize the area that you are in your house, because we can split the house in different areas. The fingers inside the house, 2D position, so that the system understands conceptually in which room the user is in. So can detect body movements and react accordingly. And this is done by tangible 3D voice in the environment. As you can see here, for example, we have a sofa and we have some cubes, and when a part of the body is being placed in that cubes, we consider that a certain void, a certain tangible void initiated, so the system can react accordingly. Also, Captain can provide information using voice, but also understand speech. So this is done by natural language processing solutions. We use some online tools for prototyping, but also integrated some offline solutions because of the GDPR restrictions that we have, and is being tested in 5 different languages. Captain can also recognize emotions based on facial expressions. So in this way, Captain creates an emotional activity recognition algorithm. It can detect how the user is feeling and to make certain choices. But the most important, I would like to say, component that the user can provide information with is the projections. And the projections are in 2 ways, either 2D projections or augmented reality projections. The augmented reality projections are done with HoloLens device, with Captain Box actually, which is based on HoloLens, and it can do the short distance interaction with the user when the user is sitting in front of the Captain Box. Here you can see some image, and by changing your head, you can change the perception that you have, so that to create the augmented reality view. But also the Captain satellite projector, which is the new hardware that the Captain project has introduced, which is a projector that provides the 2D projections in the environment. Here you can see the inside of the projection. It is for the long distance with the user, as it is initiated through all the movement that the user has done and all the other components that we have explained previously. And due to its small size, it can be placed in any room or in any location in the house. And also the use of this projection is related to the projectable points and 3D tangible points that we have explained before. And I will show you also a very video in order to understand what we are talking about. Please let me know if you here you can see that the system is here with the microphone, the speaker, the projection is and also the projection showing to be more clear. Can you hear the voice?
No, Despina, we cannot hear your sound. I think you should stop sharing and select from the share screen the share audio button along with the screen. In the down left corner. Thank you.
Suggestion now.
Yes, please.
Hi, Francesco. Dinner with friends is a good way to have a nice time. But it can also help your memory and quality of life. All the more reason for you to try it. Would you like to arrange a meeting for dinner this week?
Nice idea. Please finish the session.
One of the
user is with many words, but
perhaps you can put the video link on the chat as well so that people can see it.
So that you can see the whole video is 12 minutes long. This is why we just wanted to show a brief. So that is all from my side.
Thank you, Despina. Are there any short questions at this point or comments? If not, we'll go ahead with the next item in the program. And I'd like to ask Dr. Andoni Beristain from the Comtech, our partner, to talk about SMART goal-based virtual coaching that we have managed in Captain.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hello. I'm Andoni Beristain. I work at Comtech, which is an applied research private foundation on ICT technologies in Spain, and I will introduce the virtual coaching approach we have designed in Captain. I would like to start my presentation by making a clear distinction between a virtual coach and assistant. Current virtual assistants such as Alexa, Siri, etc. are a reactive tool which performs certain action based on the user request. On the other hand, the coach is proactive. It delivers interventions based on user and environment sensing. And in addition, coaching interventions are directed towards achieving certain objective. Coaching also involves user motivation. And the final purpose is always to produce a behavior change on the user. So it's something more deep than a conventional assistant. Considering these characteristics for a virtual coach, we have combined two ideas for our approach. On one hand, the SMART goal concepts, and on the other, a behavior change model called iChange. In our case, we have applied the SMART acronym in this way. Regarding the specific word, the coach includes a catalog of goal plans, including a set of interventions to be carried out, and with very specific purposes. For example, increasing the fiber intake in 4 weeks for the nutritional dimension. Regarding measurable work, the coaching plan includes minimum and maximum intervention amount ranges, and intervention tools have scoring systems. Combining these both characteristics, we can evaluate the achievement level and progress. Regarding attainability and relevance, the user decides which goals to join and can also decide the level of difficulty. The goals include a description and requirements to fulfill, and this helps the user decide if it is attainable or not for him. And regarding the time base, the plans have a specific duration and plan based on between 4 and 6 weeks in general. Regarding the iChange behavior change model, the intervention tools focus on increasing awareness and focus on the motivational aspects of the messaging. Also, the plans are always action-oriented to produce this behavior change. And information and preceding factors are considered by adapting text and visual aspect of the tools to the older adults and the environment. This is the general idea of the workflow for the older adult. With the SMART goals in mind, our proposal is to organize long-term goals, goal achievement and coaching by dividing it into short-term goals, the SMART goals, which should be the milestones in achieving those long-term goals. In practical terms, the user starts the system and selects a goal from a catalog of goals. Then he does the interventions in the plan with a weekly self-assessment of the evolution. And after finishing the plan, the user gets a recommendation for the next goal. And this continues as a loop. In the process, we collect data from the user and adapt. It is important to note that the user can join more than one goal in parallel and even drop certain goal in any moment. We have structured coaching in 3 time scales: weekly, daily, and momentary. Once a week, the user reviews the activities of the week during what we call coffee session. There, the user can see his performance achieving their goals, decide to join new goals or drop existing ones if he wants, and get a preview of the activities for the next week. Then, once a day, in the morning, the user can see the activity plan for that day. And then he gets the insight of the day, which is a piece of knowledge about any of the goals he has joined, or an analytics message motivating him for his performance. Then, during the day, there is not a fixed time schedule for delivering the activities. Each of the activities can have a time range during the day. For example, the recipe recommendations only happen in mealtime, but they are delivered dynamically based on the user and environment. Also, the user can reject to do any activity, and in that case, it is automatically postponed. The coach tries to balance between making the user achieve the set of activities for the day and not being overwhelming for him. These are mock-up screens of the different intervention tools or applications used by our virtual coach. As you can see in this slide, the coach always asks the user before delivering an intervention tool, as you can see here. In this other slide, you can see the interface to select a goal to join, which is part of the coffee session. That's why we show this pictogram here. First, the user selects the category he wants to improve on: cognitive, social, nutritional, or physical. Then he can see any goal to get further information about it. First, the description of the purposes and objectives, and then the requirements to join. After that, the user decides the level of difficulty. He gets 3 levels and the description of the effort to achieve each of the difficulties. And after that, the user gets a confirmation message, and he will start receiving interventions in the goal plan for the given difficulty level. Here we can see the motivational agenda. On one hand, it shows the set of target activities, interventions for the day, including the minimum and maximum amount for the day. And the motivational aspect comes from showing us the agenda also when the user achieves certain activity completion milestones, such as reaching the minimum for all interventions for the day. They are highlighted in green, as you can see here. The day insight shows an automatic analytics message after analyzing the user performance in previous days, like the message shown here. Or it can show a piece of knowledge regarding any joint goal for increasing the awareness following the H2020 model. Here we have the quiz, which shows a question regarding any active goal, which includes the quiz as part of the intervention tools. It follows the spaced learning methodology, which involves repeated long inter-trial interval to lead to more robust memory formation than does mass training, which involves short or no intervals. Quizzes address the combination of question-answer rationale triplets, altogether considered as an information pill. A health recommender system can dynamically compute a list of recommended items for each user using artificial intelligence. This is a type of machine learning system that provides users with relevant items, for example, messages, based on, for instance, their past behavior or similarities they share with other users. Combining HRS with behavioral change models can yield an innovative approach for the further use and improvement of e-health interventions. HRS have proven to be an effective tool to trigger behavior changes towards healthier lifestyles in individuals in other areas, such as smoking cessation. The Captain Coach has been equipped with a health recommender system that relies on the user profile and the user feedback from previous interactions to decide which recommendation trigger next. This HRS is available to all the smart goals integrated within the Captain Coach, and it is used to deliver the following interventions: nutrition recommendations, like this recipe example, physical activity recommendations, social interaction recommendations, and cognitive activity recommendations. The trainer The physical trainer consists of a large set of gamified physical exercises that are controlled by body movement, recognized by the system. It is based on the Web Fit for All platform, and it is used by goals focused on improving the physical capabilities such as strength, endurance, or flexibility. Finally, the cognitive games module aims to develop tools for enhancing cognitive fitness in older adults, which is transferable to daily life, such as activity planning, organization of behaviors to pursue complex sequential activities, and money management, an example of arithmetics. Also, mindfulness training to focus attention and intervene in the individual's mood. So this is all my presentation. Thank you all for your attention, and I'm open for questions now.
Thank you, Adoni. Any questions, short comments? If not, we will go ahead with the final such presentation by our partner in Ireland, and Dr. Luis Hopper will present the captain community as a unique driver for developing and testing the system now. Luis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Panos. Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay. First of all, I just wanted to say good afternoon to everyone, and to say that it's great to have the opportunity to talk to you today about how we built and developed our captain community, and why that community was so important to us in terms of driving the captain system and in terms of our ability to be able to deliver the project successfully. So to begin with, I want to talk a little bit about the community itself and how it was developed and why we felt it was so important. I then want to, I suppose, talk a little bit about why we feel it was a unique driver. So why it was fundamental to our co-design and development, to our testing and assessment. And then just at the end, maybe spend a moment just reflecting and looking back on the value of the community to all who were involved in it now that we are at the end of the project. So I guess to start off with, really, the question is, well, what do we mean by a captain community? And in its simplest terms, it really is our network of stakeholders who engaged with the captain project and who became members and participants in the co-design, development and testing of the captain system. But let's delve just a little bit deeper into, I suppose, what we mean by stakeholders and participatory design in this particular context. So with the captain project, we defined two main sort of clusters of stakeholders. We had the core of our community, who were really our primary captain users, the end users that we expected to have for the captain system when developed. And at the center of that cluster are the older adults themselves. So the people who are in need of guidance or support or motivation, maybe in terms of their lifestyle goals, and their immediate social circles. So their family, their friends, and others who support them in their day-to-day life, whether that's a family caregiver or a more formal caregiver or home help. So really it's that immediate sort of next layer of sort of social contacts that our older adults would have. Outside of that, then we have what we called advisory stakeholders, and this is really the second stakeholder cluster. And these were patient associations, doctors, so that could be your general practitioner, it could be a geriatrician, community organizations, different types of service providers, business development stakeholders, healthcare policymakers, and so on. So the idea then is that all of these stakeholders together form our captain community. And like any community, it's the core, that central group of older adults around which everything else really revolves. Closest to them are those people that support them on a day-to-day basis. And as you move further out, you have people who are in less direct contact with the older adults, but who are responsible for really creating the environment that these people live within, or creating the, let's say, the health and social care policy that people are living with. And I'll talk a little bit later on about the importance of building up a sense of community and how to maintain that. But first, we'll have a look at some of the tasks that the stakeholders were involved in and how specifically we recruited people to this group. So that core group, first of all, of older adults, they were recruited predominantly through patient groups, through our living labs, which I will come back to now in a moment, memory clinics, GPs, but also community groups like active retirement groups, active aging groups, and other community associations. The second kind of cluster then that we had were the caregivers, or the people who supported the older adults themselves. And these were recruited through the older adults who were already members of our network, so their own families and friends, through family carer groups, nursing home management groups, and then also home care and social care organizations. So these are the, let's say, the professional health and social care providers. And then finally, we had that outer sort of cluster of advisors, and they tended to be drawn from healthcare, or people in the sort of healthcare technology space, service providers, policymakers, and any other sort of industry or organizations in that sort of interaction between health industry and the business world. And we were particularly keen on organizations in a community setting, as all of these older adults were still very much living well at home. So just coming back to the living labs for a second, you can see that's kind of shaded in the three different colors. So as organizations, we have living labs. We have these groups that we, groups of extended stakeholders that we work with when we are developing any new product or any new technology. So these would be people who come into, let's say, a more controlled environment in our organizations, in our universities, to try out some of the different technologies, or to work with us in co-design sessions. So we also recruited across all of the different stakeholder groups from the networks that we already had in place in these living labs. So I suppose the next question then is, well, why is the community so important to us? Why was it important to have this the group together? And I suppose the first key task that the community had was to tell us what were the areas of their everyday lives that they needed support with. So this was one of the kind of key reasons why we built and maintained the community at the outset. They were going to be our main source of requirements for the captain system. And by engaging with the community the whole way through the development life cycle, they'd be able to provide us with feedback at different points and different phases of developing the captain system. So in other words, they would define and then sort of redefine and test and ultimately provide their acceptance of the captain system at the end of the day, and be able to tell us how effective the system is at delivering on those needs that they identified in the first place. Have a core group of end users, so a core group of members in this community, roughly 70 to 80% of the total membership of the community, who were highly engaged with us all the way along. They joined either at the start or very close to the start of the project, and they came with us all the way along during the project. So that's not to say that every participant had to be at every session. Things happen in life, people can't attend at different times. And we wanted very much the idea that if somebody wasn't able to make a particular session, that was okay. But we wanted them to know that they could come back and join in at a later point. And then we had new members of the community who joined partway along, where they'd heard about the project from a friend or through one of the local networks. So we worked very hard to keep the community members engaged in the project. We wanted to make sure they had a sort of a full understanding of the project's objectives. We wanted them really to build a sense of belonging with the project and a sort of an ownership of the project. It wasn't that they were, let's say, participants in the old sense of what a participant would do in a research project, but they were part and parcel of the project team. They co-created, they co-designed with the researchers and the developers. So together we had this broad captain community where everybody kind of knew what they added into the mix, and everybody got value from the process and enjoyed the kind of social interaction that the process enabled as well. Another thing that was very important about having this stable core group was we also wanted them to be very clear about what their obligations were to the project. So, you know, we made it clear what would be required of people, but there were all the protections that there would normally be in a research project. So we had fully informed consent. People knew they could take a break, they could miss a session if they needed to or wanted to at any point in time. They could withdraw without needing to say why. So it had the infrastructure of a research project, but more of a kind of a community feel to it. And we also kept track on how everybody was getting on in the community. Were we meeting their expectations? Were we going through content in the sessions too fast, too slow? If somebody did decide to withdraw and was comfortable having a conversation with us about it, then we could see, was there something that we could do better? And what we were trying to do here was reduce the number of withdrawals to keep it as low as we possibly could. So really then in the Captain project, we were running a multi-site kind of clinical study with our Captain community that was spread across different living labs in 5 different countries. So in Greece, Spain, Italy, Ireland, and Cyprus. And as I mentioned, we were using this kind of living lab approach. And there are different ways that you can run a living lab. So it was very important to us at the outset to identify the most effective way of doing that for the kind of project that we were involved in. So very early on in the process, the partners, the consortium came together to identify what best practice was at that point in time around working in living labs and what the different approaches are to participatory design, the pros and cons of different methods that we could use. And we developed a very clear set of guidelines that really framed the co-creation work and the iterative development that we were going to undertake over the remaining years of the Captain project. And these iterations, we came to call them sprints. So we looked at the ways in which this would work and the points of interaction between ourselves and our Captain community. So just to sort of show you, I suppose, what this was like in reality, these are a couple of images from the living lab that's located in Thessaloniki in Greece. This was the first of our living labs. We had our interest living lab in Valladolid in Spain. We had 2 living labs in Ireland, one in Dublin City University and one in Maynooth University. We had the Auxilia lab in APSS in Trento in Italy. And we had our final living lab in Amen in Nicosia in Cyprus. And this one was a little bit different in that it was located in a nursing home setting. So the idea here was looking at how the Captain system could benefit older adults who were living in protected apartments in a nursing home setting. So that gives you a kind of a flavor of the different locations, the different contexts of the 5 living labs. So why then do we talk about the Captain community being this unique driver of development and testing? So just to demonstrate this, I'm not going to go through all of the detail of each of the different development cycles. I'm just going to pick out some highlights to kind of demonstrate why it was so important to us and you know, how much of an influence the Captain community had on what we did as a project. So I mentioned a framework that we worked within, and it really is this idea of iteration. So we started very much with what was a sort of a co-design methodology, and that was based on design thinking. So this kind of creative ideation of how can, what problems are there out there and how can we resolve them. And then we were going through cycles that were really, agile developmental methods that are very close to those used in companies who are going through their sort of lean startup phase. It's about prototyping. It's about seeing something in action, and is it what we thought it was going to be when we talked about the idea? Does it need to change now that we see it? Does it really do what we had hoped? And we went through multiple of these cycles. So really what we were trying to avoid was that scenario where you have a community or a set of end users give you their requirements, and then you go away for maybe 12 to 18 months and come back with our interpretation of what was required, which may be wrong, it may be right. It's probably some combination of the two. By having this engagement and really, engagement of large numbers of people along the way, it meant that every time something new was developed, the participants, the community had a chance to interact with it, tell us what they thought of it, tweak the requirements if necessary, and then move into the next cycle. So really ensuring that we were building the right things. And we organized ourselves to be engagement driven. And it was about coordinating and synchronizing the activities across the Living Labs using this particular framework. And we had sort of 3 key engagement points. So the first of these was where we recruited members initially to our community, and we asked them just to monitor their own lifestyles, to it was like a diary study, to fill out some information on a daily or weekly basis, whatever suited them best, that really just captured what their lifestyle was like. So we didn't ask them to do anything different. We just asked them to live as they normally would and jot down some key information about their physical habits, their sleep, their nutrition, and just important parts of kind of their everyday life. And the idea here was to build up a baseline of different types of older adults and typically what their day-to-day living looks like from a data perspective. The second point was this participatory sort of co-development that I've talked about already, going from requirements through prototyping. And the third point of the study was taking the developed Captain technology out into real settings. So outside of the Living Lab and into the homes of older adults and into the apartments within the nursing home settings. So if we look at that diary study, for example, just maybe to give you a sense of how many people were involved in the different phases. So we gathered data for the diaries in Ireland, in Italy, and in Greece. And we contacted 86 people, we enrolled 72 people, and 68 people stayed with us throughout that data collection period. And that was a 3 to 5 month period, depending on when the participants were recruited. So it is a lengthy diary study. So such small numbers of dropout is really very, very good for a study that would have that kind of intensive data collection. And the real importance of this is that we were able to use this to drive our algorithms, to enable our algorithms to learn about the older adult population as a whole. And we could then look at the data and we could cluster the data in different ways. So identify cohorts of older adults that had certain characteristics that were in common with each other, that lived certain types of lifestyles, or if you like, represented different personas. In the second phase, we went through, as I mentioned, the gathering of requirements. This was very participatory in its orientation. It was about being creative. It was about brainstorming. All of the ideas really came from the Captain community themselves. Having gathered the problems, we went back then to look at, well, what kind of technologies could we look at to solve these problems? And we used a World Cafe type approach when we were doing this, this exercise. From there, then you're starting to bring in, you know, ideas about what tools might be in the Captain environment, what how that interaction should operate between the end user and the system itself, and starting to kind of categorize the requirements and prioritize the requirements into the areas that need the most support. And again, just as an example, you can see that we started off with 52 older adults, 29 healthcare professionals, and 10 informal, so family caregivers in the first sprint. By the second sprint, we had quite a lot more older adults, about the same healthcare professionals, a few more informal caregivers. And what we found over time is that although some of the participants changed themselves, or they came in and out of different sessions, the numbers tended to always rise. And one of the reasons that we feel that was the case is we also kept very close track on how people were getting on. Were they enjoying the sessions? Would they like to attend the next session? Would they recommend it to a friend? And quite often they did. And this is where the kind of snowballing or the growth of the Captain community really fed from. So I mentioned earlier on that it's absolutely vital to build a sense of community and then to maintain that sense of community. And that does take time, but it's very, very important to do that. And the time that you would spend, particularly in the early part of the project, you get back, you know, in multiple ways as you go through the rest of the project, and keeping the momentum and keeping that engagement was hugely important to us, as I'll show you now in a second. So we had lots of different ways, aside from our website and our social media, of keeping in contact with our community. So we held different Captain events in different locations. So for example, in Thessaloniki, there were events in the planetarium and in the archaeological museum. We had newsletters, something as simple as a Christmas card. When COVID hit, we had messages that we used to send out to our community on a regular basis, particularly in those early lockdown stages during COVID. And quite simply, sometimes it was coffee and a chat. Sometimes it was just touching base, seeing how everything was going, and just making time to have that conversation with members of our community. This gives you another example of how the numbers continued to grow as we went through those development phases. And you can see, if you look at the total participants column, each sprint had more people than in the last sprint, and new participants were joining us all of the time. And there's just some examples in the images there of sessions in the Living Lab where members of the community were starting to engage with different elements of the Captain system. And everything was going beautifully until February 2020, when unfortunately COVID came along. And COVID came along right at the point where we were beginning to really join all of the different aspects of the Captain system together. And we were left in a situation where we were all in lockdown in the different countries. Not only were we unable to interact with our community, our Captain community, we weren't able to interact with each other. We were working from home. Typically 1 or 2 researchers in each location had the Captain system in their home with them. So it became really quite challenging at that point. And what I really want to kind of show you here is that despite the challenge and despite the impact that COVID-19 brought to us, the Captain community really sustained what it was we were able to do at that point. So the intention had been to bring the whole system together in the Living Lab environment, first of all, and then deploy it into people's homes. And obviously we're talking about older adults. We're talking about a cohort that were in isolation, that were cocooning. And obviously, you know, any sort of interaction with that group was hugely challenging. And we had sort of paused our our start time for the real home pilots on more than one occasion in the hope that we would get to the point with COVID-19 that we would be able to go into people's homes. And as time went on, we realized that that was very unlikely. But the fact that we had kept in contact with our captain community throughout all of that time meant that in the countries where the restrictions were still at their highest, so Ireland and Italy, for example, what we were able to do was a kind of a virtual showcase. So we were able to engage with people using Zoom, kind of interact remotely and demonstrate the captain system in that setting. So not ideal, but what we were able to do was go out to more people than we would otherwise have been able to on a sort of a face-to-face perspective, and really get their opinion about where we had gotten to with the development and how it looked in relation to their original expectations. Thankfully, the situation in nursing homes had improved significantly, and we were able to do some data collection and some testing in the protected apartments in the nursing home. And then really, you know, it was absolutely fantastic that in Spain and Greece, we were in a situation where, you know, notwithstanding all of the public health guidelines that needed to be followed, some of our participants were happy to have the captain system installed in their homes. So it was installed, and then the rest of the interaction was virtual, but it really, without their help and without their support, it's something that we would not have been able to do. And we really do feel that that's where there was the benefit of having that community with us the whole way along. You weren't necessarily going out and recruiting again from scratch. People had invested some time in this, and they were as keen as we were really to see it come to fruition. So it was hard at times, but honestly, we couldn't have done it without the community. And just to wrap up, the benefits of having the community are that we get to hear the voice of the end user, we get that frequent feedback, we build what they actually want. For those software developers among you, you will know that the earlier you identify that you need to change something in a software development lifecycle, the less costly that is. So amending as we went was much less costly than only discovering we needed to change something at the end. And the further you go through the prototyping, the more tangible it becomes for the end user. Yes, there are challenges. It takes time to build and maintain the network. Some people find it difficult to visualize what the technology can do at the start. It can be difficult to manage expectations. You know, not every requirement is going to make it into the final product. And when you are as sort of interdependent on a group as we were with the captain community, things like COVID do have a huge impact. But then again, you see the other side of that where it gets you through and it gives you more options at the end of the day. So finally then, our just a couple of quotes from our captain community themselves. You can see, you know, it's the idea of being able to give voice to their opinions, having a voice, having ownership of the project. They were some of the key things that everybody really valued. And overall, it was about social engagement. So even the act of coming together in the different workshops and having a bite of lunch afterwards, that really made a difference to people. It I suppose, showed them that we valued their input and we were willing to give them time, you know, beyond the pure needs of the project. And that's spending that time with each other and building that relationship was hugely beneficial for us. So thank you very much for your time. If you have any more questions about the Captain Project, we're more than happy to respond to them as we go through today's event. And obviously there's more information available on the website.
Thank you very much, Louise. Are there any questions, any comments from the audience, from any of the project partners or other projects? No. Thank you very much. So according to the agenda, we'll have a short break for 10 minutes and we'll come back with the second part of the event. So see you in 10 minutes. Okay, I think it's time to come back. Okay, Dokimos, would you like to share?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Panos. Now the next presentations are in the context of towards the spin-off company, and also how we go from lab to market, something that the captain has tried. So in the first presentation, Miso will Stanev will present on behalf of Wolfgang. So Miso, member of the innovation exploitation partner of Captain, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Dokimos. I think you should be seeing my screen now, the presentation.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And welcome to everyone from my side as well. As Dokimos said, I'm also part of innovation, and I'll be presenting on behalf of Wolfgang today, who unfortunately could not join. And so the main goal of my presentation is to actually show you the Captain Coach, so the spin-off of the whole project, but actually through the lens of the business community and the clients. So this will be, so my whole presentation will be much more business oriented than consortium or project oriented, so to say. And so without losing any more time, I'll just like to start right away with it. And so I'm here to introduce Captain Coach to you, which, as I already said, is a spin-off of the whole project. And our main goal is to reshape health with e-care and e-coaching. But here we have the question, why? Why do you actually want to reshape it? And the answer to this question is actually pretty simple. So as we know, the aging of the world's population has serious consequences for our society. And this also puts real pressure on the health systems worldwide. So if we look at the projections, currently there are around 703 million people who are 65 plus years old. And this number is expected to grow to 1.5 billion by 2050. So in the next 30 years, you can see what an increase there will be. And those demographic developments will naturally result in higher prices of care services, and it will make it very challenging for people to keep people at home and at the same time healthy and independent, for as long as possible. So having said that, the mission of Captain Coach is to enable older people to live healthy, safe, independent lives in their own homes for as long as possible. So how is this made possible? It's actually made possible by Captain Coach, the technology, which is an assistant for elderly people who have physical or mental limitations in their daily life. But we are currently also expanding this to other target groups as well. And borderline is Captain Coach offers an innovative user interaction solution that seeks to empower and motivate older people to stay independent for as long as possible. So because Dokimos and the spin-off already covered the technical side of the whole project, I don't want to repeat them one more time so that I don't bore you. And I would like to just jump right into the business side of the spin-off. So just quickly go through the slides. You already saw some of them, so it's nothing new. And I would like to come to this slide. So just to give you a heads up to give heads up to the people who might not know this, but during our last project meeting in Munich in 2020, we discussed the spin-off of the whole project, and after a decision was made, we proceeded with actually spinning off the whole project, and I'm proud to say that we've come a long way since then. And so now again, back to the business side. Currently there are 4 major healthcare markets in the EU in terms of the highest healthcare spending. So the first thing we do is actually look at the healthcare spending and which healthcare systems can actually afford the usage and integration of such a technology. And so currently those 4 markets are Great Britain, France, Italy, and Germany. So what is interesting is that combined, those markets have around 56 million people who can potentially benefit from Captain Coach. And given our strategic objectives and due to the fact that we obviously cannot enter all of those markets at once, we've decided to start first with Germany, and then the other markets will follow in due time in the near future. On the slide, you can also see the distribution of the elderly people, and you can also see that Germany also has like the highest number of elderly people when compared with the other three markets. So after the stakeholder analysis was done and we more or less had an overview of who we actually want to target, then we decided that we would initially approach care homes and caretaking organizations, which means that we would first start with the various B2B2C and B2G2C scenarios. So in other words, in the beginning, we will not target directly the end customers, since obviously there are some barriers that could not be overcome that easily and without the necessary resources. And what we are also trying to do is to actually build the market use case, so what people will actually buy at the end. And this is much easier to achieve when you have a such use cases with already established institutions such as care homes, hospitals, insurers, and so on. Then on a later stage, we'll actually start target private users and private entities. But yeah, once again, this will happen again at a later stage once the business use case is clear. And then last but not least, it's also worth mentioning that we've also developed a very interesting backend business model, which means that the vast amount of data that the whole system will generate from all of the devices that will be deployed would actually be used for various research and development purposes. So in the front side, you have you have all of those users and institutions that use the system, but then on the back side, this system obviously generates huge amounts of data that if analyzed correctly and in an advanced way, this could really lead to some I'm confident to say to some breakthroughs even. And so far during the presentation I said multiple times we, but it's actually not a time to present you who is actually on the team of the spin-off company. And so right now we're a team of 10 people with diverse, strong academic and industry backgrounds, and 6 out of the 10 people that you see have already been working together for the past 3 years. So there's almost no one new as a team member. Everybody knows each other. So this really facilitates the whole collaboration and the whole work, especially in the beginning. And now the financial side of the thing. So obviously nobody wants the project to die, and we're entering a very critical period of not of the project, but actually of the project, but more specifically of the company. Right now we're in a period where the startup obviously has to survive, gets its first customers, and at a later stage begin to grow. So as of now, our initial shareholder contribution amounts to around 235,000 euros, and we expect to generate around 213,000 euros in revenue in 2021. Again, this is a projection, so it's also subject to different market dynamics, regulations, and the overall business situation. But we remain optimistic, so we are doing our best to achieve the targets that we've set. And then even more ambitiously, we aim to achieve around 835,000 in 2022, when we expect that the system will be already widely deployed in the target markets. However, it's growing the company is costly and it's hard. So in order to be able to scale the technology even further and to ensure the long-term sustainability of the company, we but also I forgot to mention it, more importantly, to be able to begin the large-scale production of Captain Coach, we are currently looking to raise some capital in the amount of 550,000 euros. And again, stemming from the financial projections, this amount should be enough to safeguard the company, so to say, for the first 2 to 3 years. And as I already mentioned, we've come a long way since March 2020 last year, and there were some very important milestones that were achieved, and I would like to just quickly present them to you. So as a first step, after we decided that the company will be the project will be spun off in a separate entity, we started looking how to actually accelerate the process from a business side. And so once the spin-off was established, the core team of Captain Coach actually joined an acceleration program called EIT Digital Accelerator in order to boost the company and to also shorten the time to the time that we need to enter the market fully. So also you already know this, but users were constantly involved in the evaluation and the development of the technology, and this also led to the fact that we now have already indications of first orders. But again, the COVID-19 pandemic really presents a challenge. So, but again, we remain optimistic, and we hope that we will achieve everything that we've set as goals till the end of the year. And so after the acceleration program was completed, we successfully established the legal entity of Captain Coach in Greece. This is where the entity will be based. As you all know, by now the final prototype is already also ready, and currently we are preparing for the manufacturing side of the things. And I think this is more or less from my side. I also saw that I'm running out of time. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be very much happy to answer them. If not now, you can also send me an email, and I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miso. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any question. Thank you, Miso.
Thank you.
And now we have the pleasure to have with us George Hadafoulas, and he will give a presentation on the new MDR and actually the roadmap from the lab to the market. So thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the kind invitation. And also, I would like to congratulate you for reaching the successful end of the project. I'm looking forward to our final workshop next year and pay back the invitation. My colleague Luke Prometel will talk more about the project in the second session. My background is internal medicine, but I'm working the last 10 years as evaluator and health technology assessment protocol coordinator and pilot coordinator for digital health. And so I have many times faced the challenges and the opportunities at the same time the medical device exploitation and medical market exploitation creates. To my understanding, from what I see, your project is more care oriented, and I don't know how many of the components are under MDR. Maybe it's only type 1, class 1, or even just CE, but this is your topic to discuss and decide. I will talk more on the scenarios that require a more that fall under more strict regulation than just a care application. So we are all dealing with digital health. It's a very broad domain. All of us who deal with software and other various apps and even the hardware that help us in everyday living, lifestyle mostly. All these devices sometimes not even require a CE when they are just an app, or most of the times they just require a CE mark. But when it comes to monitor of patients or human monitoring and stuff like this, then we enter the chapter of digital medicine, which is a subtopic of digital health. Then in that case, according to the new MDR, you need all of these types is MDR class 1 or required, which is practically CE because it doesn't require many things, but it falls under this category. This has certain responsibilities and regulations to follow. And mostly what is the new thing is the classic class 2A, 2B, and 3 MDR classification with MDD. Now with the software, which under the previous medical regulation, the MDD, there was a term saying that standalone software can be classified. Here it's classified, it's formally, and it's even more holistic and much more detailed the way it regulates. So this MDR was voted in 2017, but it was supposed to be enforced last year, but because of the COVID, it was enforced last May. What does this create? The classic division of lifestyle and non-lifestyle, the medical device software, as the new regulations call it, MDSW, is a small is a very small topic. It's more small part of the huge health and digital health and all these software of lifestyle or e-care. It was calculated in 2019, probably now it's even more, that there were 318 mobile only, not even to mention other health applications, and 2 of them were added every day. A small part of it, however, it's a medical device practically, and this is that changes everything and makes very challenging to take it to the market after you produce a paper or you finish a project. So this is the regulation, that's Rule 11 of the MDR Annex 8 that says that all software that is medical, that fall under classification of medical device is class 1, unless it monitors or helps or take decision on diagnosis, then it's class 2A. If it can cause a severe irreversible deterioration of patient state of health or death, it's class 3. If it can cause a serious deterioration of state of health, it's class 2B. And if there are 2 other subcategories that also between 2A and 2B. This means that there is a special document that helps you to classify your software if it falls after the MDR. It's in this infographic, it's even more simpler under 5 steps, but the initial document, if you download it, it's even more complicated. And if there is a big debate that it's not enough, this is what I hear from experts. It's not an easy thing to classify medical device software, it seems. But we will find out, I guess, now that the MDR is enforced. And some implantable devices, the pink diagram image under it, includes software. And this, in that case, it's even more complicated because it's even more stricter, the regulation. Class 3 is what really changes everything on software. It requires not only the classic procedure of assessment from notified body, but here there is a group of experts that are recruited to give a decision. So it's even, this is the big change. All of you are familiar, even if you're not clinicians, with now with the vaccines of COVID, with the classes of the phases of approval of pharmaceuticals. It's from phase 1 to 4 post-market on the left side. On the med devices, it was not so familiar, the process, to every researcher or technical developer, but there is this procedure. And this is even more know-how that needs to be required and to be taken into account if you plan to take such a device into the market. It also, what is added is the AI. It was first USA in FDA that enforced such a regulation. And last month, EU proposed, the European Commission proposed the regulation on AI that it includes high risk and low risk medical use of AI. It's going to be debated with the Parliament and the the EU Council this year. Maybe next year we'll have a new regulation. So this also is something that will be taken into consideration when you develop such a software. And as other mentioned already before me, you already did some of these steps to go to the market for your application, which to my understanding, it's not a medical one, but even you did all these. I remember Evdokim was discussing IPO rights when you were discussing the spin-off, the business opportunities and the business income that was mentioned before. So all these are things that you already have addressed. In our project, at least one use case, the CVD use case, the cardiovascular one, will have certain functions that will fall under these classifications. So what we plan to do this year is to classify which of these software, medical software, will fall under which category. Then according to our contract, we're supposed to reach TRL 7 and prepare all the steps, to map all the steps for TRL 8. So that was the contractual obligation. And this is also a very interesting thing to notice, that all the cost and all the complication start to increase in TRL 8 and 9. Till TRL 7, it's more feasible, but TRL 8 and 9 require huge effort and a lot of documentation. And AI will also add to this, the new regulation. So for proofs and for outcomes, I would like to remind you, now that you finished the project, that together with the documents, you would like to welcome any papers you would like to submit to this special issue. And I would like to close. I don't see the example, the case study in this. I have a case study slide. Anyway, from I cannot find now, that it was a practical example from the PMD technology for Parkinson from the University of Vienna that produced this successful story to the market from the lab. They had to after the FP7, I think it was the first prototype. They managed to get a seed funding from NBG, the National Bank of Greece incubator, and then from the venture capital of EcoFund, Big Pie, and the total investment costed them more than $1.5 million, and now they have a 2A classification. So that was a success story, but it's not so easy to reach that success story. And actually, my suggestion will be the PM15 projects that we plan to do this maybe through a spin-off like you, to have a workshop next year or in the next months to discuss and share exchange know-how and challenges we face in order to foster cooperation and after our PM15 projects. So thank you for your attention, and please follow our activities as a tale through our social media.
Thank you, George, for the presentation. Any comments? Questions? Okay, and now we'll move on to the next session, which is on the future of smart living in Europe. Panos will be okay. Here. Panos, we finish. We move on to the next session, which you are chairing.
Okay. So in the next session, we have the future of smart living in Europe. We'll start with a bunch of PM15 projects, as we call them. Our project officer, Dr. Christoph Klein, mentioned the synergies that we have created with all those projects, and we are happy that we exchange these experiences during these panel events in each of the projects. So it's a pleasure and an honor to welcome Dimitris Gatsios from one of the these projects, Hollow Balance, and he will explain to us how balanced rehabilitation is being happening now with the Hollow Balance project. So Dimitris, the floor is yours, and thanks again.
Thank you for having me. I was glad to hear all the previous presentations, especially the one from Dr. Dafoulas, who referred also to our success as University of Ioannina in bringing PD Monitor to market. As he said, most of the money that were collected after the funding were directed for getting the CE marking and going through all these very tedious procedures. And this is obviously the biggest challenge that you as captain will have in order to get your product in the market now that you have the company. Feel free to ask us whatever you need about this, especially Professor Fotiadis can give you all the hints for this procedure. Now, going back to Hollow Balance, I think you can see, hope you can see the slides.
Yes.
As you said, Hollow Balance was one of the projects funded under PM15. We indeed had a lot of synergies. We are actually working on additional synergies with Smart Pair, which is another big European project, and within it we are doing an additional pilot of our platform. Hollow Balance, as you may have guessed, is about balance and addressing problems with balance and falls, since this is a kind of pandemic for older citizens. 1 out of 3 face problems and even fall at home manually. One solution to this is balance rehabilitation therapy, which is has been shown to be very effective for persons suffering from dizziness, as well as reducing the number of falls and the fear of falling, which is the other big aspect that needs to be addressed in this population. The ambition of Hollow Balance is to actually produce a state-of-the-art system providing evidence-based interventions. These evidence-based interventions are gradually progressive, they are multifactorial, as you will see, and they are using cutting-edge technology. Essentially, Hollow Balance provides 3 types of coaching: balance physiotherapy, which is the BRT that we have presented; cognitive training, which is also important, especially combined with auditory tasks in order to achieve this dual tasking that is a big issue for these patients; and finally, a multi-level motivation, physical activity promotion, which is the long-term effect that we expect to have to these patients, because it is not necessary to train them just for 8 weeks that the intervention lasts, but to convince them to adhere to a more healthy lifestyle and be adherent to that healthy lifestyle. Hollow Balance is all about coaching and motivation. We have adopted a standard behavioral change model, this COMBI, capability, motivation, opportunity model, trying to, as I said, to achieve adherence to the rehabilitation program and also to the healthy lifestyle, because it is important for those patients to stay active after their interventions, and this reduces a lot the risk of falling. The main technologies that we have are depicted here. They consist of Internet of Things devices, smart watches, heart rates monitor, smart insoles, IMUs. All of them are collecting their data in an edge computer, which is used as a hub to provide the augmented reality intervention. And you see over there the coach, the physiotherapist, the visual physiotherapist, and we have also Adelson Analytics, which is the most difficult part to get into any commercial product, because as Dr. Dafoulas explained, the landscape for AI in what we are doing is not that clear, and the EU doesn't have a very clear instruction about it. The FDA just provided something. It all comes to a physio dashboard in which the clinicians can see how the patient performed and adjust their weekly plans. This is the set of devices that we have. You can see it's a hand-mounted device, a heart rate monitor, an IMU in the lumbar, and a set of insoles that the patient wears. This is used for getting trained in the clinic. This box over here is a 2 meters in each side box, in which there is a projector behind this panel here, and the patient sees the hologram in a human size to give him some instructions and explain him how to train. Our portable system is this one. This is a portable head-mounted device. And again, with it, the patient is able to see the coach in human size, and he gets instructions and corrections when he's not performing well. You can also see in the bottom left this seal here, which is one of our Excel games, helping the patient when he's bored with the instructions to train. The most difficult and challenging part, as you have said, was to conduct our pilot study within the restrictions of COVID. Our aim was to train 80 patients in each of the two groups, the control and holobalance in our randomized control trial, over an 8 weeks period. Essentially, it goes about feasibility, about having user-centered design evidence for it, and evaluating, exploring the user's behaviors, and finding associations with stimuli and motivation. Until now, we are very proud that we have reached 136 recruited patients out of the 160, and we will reach the final number by the end of the project. 69 of them have been trained with our system, most of them at home, but also a big part of them, 32 of them, at clinic with the other system that you have seen. So we will not only see how holobalance compares to the control, to the usual care, but also how the two different interfaces compare with each other and have effect in the outcome for the patients. Luckily, we didn't have a lot of dropouts. Only 5 of them dropped out. We have a high system operability, obviously in the clinic, but also at home. And overall, we have seen that our patients, regardless of how tech-savvy they are, they can use the system. Of course, the kind of training and support that they need depends on how well acquainted they are with the technology. The user experience is considered until now good and motivating, and overall the intervention is feasible and the system is acceptable. Of course, this will be further substantiated with the analysis of our pilot study. And if you need to find more information about the project, please visit our website, find the contacts there, and write to us, since we didn't have a lot of time to go into more details at this session. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. Are there any questions? Dimitris, for the holobalance, you can also write in the chat. Okay, if not, we will proceed with the next project. Thank you very much, Dimitris, and thank you very much, holobalance.
Thank you.
Live with some scientific results and personal results from the project which Jordan Dimitrov will share the achievements now. Jordan, thanks again for collaborating throughout this journey with us and for sharing the experience and for your presentation today.
Thank you very much, Professor Bomidis. I also would like to start with a big thank to our partners and friends from Captain Project and from all other PM15 projects, not only for this invitation, but also for our collaboration, which we had during these 3-4 years. Just to share my screen. Just one sentence for SAM, for those who are unfamiliar with. It's again a multimodal coaching system to elderly, gathering unobtrusively data from seniors' everyday life, detecting behavioral changes, and sending coaching recommendations to both seniors themselves and their closest ones, which we call secondary users of SAM system. Today's short presentation will cover something we just completed, our pilot study report, which has explored how SAM was accepted and how impacted its users' lives. So you will see some of our recent results. Something about the pilot study setup. It had a couple of instruments which we used: the long-term pilots, single sessions, and the so-called stakeholder feedback gathering activities. We had 36 long-term pilot uses mainly in Austria and Bulgaria. And each of these long-term pilots were between 2 and 6 months. These variations in pilot periods was partly because of the COVID pandemic, and we had unfortunately some users who dropped out during the pandemic period, but they were replaced, and we managed to fulfill our goals. We also had 93 single sessions participants, which faced and which used for a short time SAM system, and 126 stakeholders in Austria, Bulgaria, stakeholders gathering activities in Austria, Bulgaria, and Slovenia. We tested SAM for two things: technology acceptance and user experience perspective, with a focus on how the different interfaces in SAM compare to each other and how well they were received by the users. And coaching and well-being in general, where we focus on how SAM impacts users' lives from a general quality of life perspective, and from the domain-specific perspectives. In terms of domains, we had different domains as mobility domain, activity, social activity, sleep domain. So there were a couple of models which were integrated in SAM system. In this slide, you can see some of our results based on users' assessment. For instance, we can see that probably almost 2/3 of the SAM users reported that there were some sleep quality improvements while during the period they were using SAM system. In Slovenia, in Austria, sorry, half of the users reported sleep improvements. In terms of our social activity domain, like 54% of the users reported kind of a positive attitude towards SAM and its role to motivate and stimulate more social interactions of our users. We had something like a single sessions where almost 100 users faced and met with SAM, and the results of these single sessions, the summative results you can see on the slide. Almost 60% of these people think that SAM as a system has potential in the future to be used and to help elderly people lives. The system properties were approved by almost 80% of the users. And the overall rating of experience with the system is also quite well assessed, and the result is like 75%. So all these graphs, charts, they show comparatively good acceptance and positive attitude towards our system. In the next slide, we can see some results from one of our users. This user is 76 years old, and the coaching recommendations were given to him mainly through secondary users, which means that the primary user was not so confident using and interacting with SAM system, and that's why he preferred to use the secondary users, his social circles, to interact with the system and to give him the respective recommendations. So from the average scores in terms of adaptive technology acceptance and the user experience questionnaire, it is noted from the results that the user's experience with SAM was again positive from the technology perspective. The user started off with some doubt about the system's reliability and average intent for future use. Probably we have only in the usability kind of a negative trend, as we started at the beginning with rates of 3.3 and it went down to 1.86 as an average rate, but this was because of the fact that this user preferred to use secondary users, and in fact he didn't interact himself with the SAM system. As long as the other criteria we use, most of them develop positively. For instance, the value for the values for both improved at the end of the study, of all improved at the end of the study. For instance, we can see that the interest towards SAM system is much higher, from 1.8 to 6. We have almost double the result with the so-called trust, which we measured. So we can see really a lot of improvements in terms of interaction and reliance on SAM system. We also used two instruments. One of them called Older People Quality of Life instrument, which was a questionnaire developed from our team. At the end of the study, the user reflected on his quality of life, reporting that SAM has improved it to some extent, because he considered himself a little bit more active. Even though the user doesn't report any change in his habits, he still feels SAM has helped him to be more, or to live more independently and autonomously. The user felt happy during post-study interviews, as he did during their pre-study ones, and however, the user noted that SAM has contributed to his happiness, because the secondary user who was involved in the whole exercise was supporting our primary user and was much more involved in his everyday life. So all these results and the average of these results show that we have rates from 104 to 125, which means a positive trend. We also use the so-called Luben social network scale, which we adapted for the purposes of our survey. And it was used to assess social activity of our user. Our user says his social relationships were improved because he walked more and meet with more people during these walks, even though there was no change in his social habits. But because of the coaching actions, the frequency of the meetings with the friends, with the neighbors, and the events of going out of our user increased as a number, which also caused an improvement of the overall index we use to measure this social activity. At the right side of the right side of this slide, you can see how SAM system works. If you look to the first and third row, on the first row, you can see 3 of our coaching actions, which include suggest calling, suggest going out on event, or suggest going out on event together with someone. And you can see on the third row that our system assess the situation with the calls our user have and the meetings which happen together with someone outside. So what you can see on the third row is that for the period from 25th, for example, 25th of March till 2nd of April, the meetings outside with someone else were assessed at the lowest levels. And these are the times when on the first row, you can see that our SAM system sent coaching actions either suggesting just to go out to our user or suggesting to going out with someone else. And for instance, in the period of 3rd of April to 8th of April, the situation with the callings of our user was at the lowest levels, and exactly at that time our coaching, our SAM system was recommending to our users to have more calls with
Jordan,
his social
sorry
circles.
for interrupting
Okay, that's all. Yes, that's yes.
We don't see your slides. We see the same slide for a long time.
No, yes, this is, I don't know.
Okay.
This is the last slide, and I was just referring to the right side of this slide.
Great, because there was a question on chat about this. Okay, please go on.
Okay, no, that's I'm done. This was the last sentence. Thank you for this opportunity. This was the end of the presentation. Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Good.
That's okay. We had this problem. I think we will survive.
Yes, I hope you saw. There were 4 slides, and I hope you saw all of them. I just didn't.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We have enjoyed your voice and all the explanations, so don't worry. We'll move to the Nestor project and the Nestor coaching system. Nestor coaching system towards the future. And Giuseppe Andreoni will present this. Thank you for joining us, Giuseppe. The floor is yours.
It's a pleasure for me, and thank you to all of you and to the colleagues of the PM15 group, which share with us this fantastic journey in this set of projects, framework of related projects regarding multi-coaching activities related to healthy aging, let's say. I will say something related to Nestore. What are the main results of the Nestore project? Our journey ended on February 28th this year, and so we have already done even the final review. Well, after 42 months, 7 plenary meetings, several integration meetings, and more than 760 man-months effort, we have achieved different results in terms of methodology, in terms of scientific findings, in terms of technological developments, communication, and policies. More or less in relation to the usability and technical reliability, and also, let's say, efficacy of the system, we have more or less the same results that all the other projects already presented, with more or less the 75% of participation of people to the pilot test due to the COVID emergency that prevented us to reaching further goals. We had a story of starting pilots, stop, start, stop, and so it was really difficult for us in order to keep the system alive and keep also the motivation and engagement of person in the pilot itself. But giving a look to the results in the different fields about using users and methodology, we can say that more or less the elderly people are really the ultimate experts of their own lives. So they are really incredibly important in the co-design activity. And so the activity of silver-centered design of the new technologies and usability by design should be really achieved and continued alongside the continuous evolution of the project, but even beyond. So this is a key point for technology success, but it needs also the introduction of new methodologies for assessments of the participation and usability and user's perspective. From the let's say, scientific and methodological perspective, we have, let's say, more or less confirmed that the fifth P, that is the coming psychocognitive factor, is really important in the success of coaching techniques. Psychological factors are really the crucial factors in order to sustain motivation and engagement. On the other side, we have more or less confirmed that there is the needs of an average of 60-70 days in order to form and assume habits that could be relevant in order to adopt healthy lifestyles. And as already stated in a very recent publication, there's the need of a first-step, more or less, approach with a meaningful initial start and specific goal settings in order to make this intervention feasible, but most of all acceptable by end user itself. Of course, this pandemic avoids us to test this assumption in full, but our pilot shows positive trends towards this kind of findings. So the promising pivotal role of the exploitation of personal interest that was at the base of the Nestore project, that is what we call pathway of interest, it's really an important strategy to be achieved in the future perspective. About the scientific findings of the Nestore project, we have provided a comprehensive multi-domain human model that has been released in open access mode, and so you can find it in GitHub and even another open access platform in order to be used in future studies. And it has been also implemented in an open access ontology that I was relating to. We have developed a multi-domain coaching strategies that allowed us in order to have not only a multi-domain, but even a single domain, but the possibility to have a very modular approach, so exploiting the personal interest of people. The motivational messages have been defined in each domain, and they represent a very interesting things about the fifth P I was mentioning before, about the psychological approach in order to sustain engagement. We have provided food receipts and a nutritional database for food recognition, but also the translation of the dishes into the proper nutritional and related ingredients. We have released also this data set in the multi-domain without, let's say, statistical significance, but very important for further studies. About the technological findings, we have solved the problem of the interoperability with the proprietary solution in order to have a modular platform that is capable to be interoperable, but also open to the Internet of Medical Things. We have managed the complexity of such a system, dealing with proprietary solution and third-party devices in order to give the rise to a modular platform, as mentioned before. The DSS was implemented both at the simulator as an active DSS, and the simulation was really important in order to test the platform and the proper functioning of the developed solution, even during the last part of the developments. And so this was really a safe, let's say, strategy in order to implement a TRL7 approach that was needed. We produced the 70 kits of this very complex platform completely and delivered to the users. And also we have to include in the technological findings the technical management of lockdown with the different, let's say, and recursive operation system updates that required some activities in keeping the platform alive. So there was also an exploration of innovative smart patch for a multi-purpose and multi-parameters monitoring long-term carried out by one of our partners that will be further explored in the next future. In terms of dissemination, we reached very interesting goals with 45 scientific publications and others to come because we are still writing. One book, 3 pitches, and the collaboration with all of you. And I'm very grateful for this, in particular with Captain, Vuker, Jordan, and all the projects also contributed to our book that is really important. And even 120 and more participants in the final events that was online due to the COVID restriction, but it was really an impressive results. In terms of exploitation, we had a deep market analysis that is now available for our partners in order to understand how these exploitable results of the Nestor could be brought to the market. In fact, the assessment about the return of investment, both in terms of economical product, but also the social return of investment, was really positive. And so some partners are looking for a commercial partnership in order to go ahead with the market. Very interesting indeed, the Captain strategy in order to create a proper spin-off, even as a results of the project. What we can say is that Nestor as a platform and in some of these components is really open to the new era of the digital therapeutics. And this means that we can really open the prevention as key health pillar for the future strategy in our healthcare systems. About the lessons learned, and I try to keep the message very short, we have different, let's say, levels. The first one is about related to the multidisciplinarity and differences in management. Multidisciplinarity projects implies complexity and strong cooperation between different scales. So it means that even we have to intensify the number of physical meetings and exchanges in order to create common languages and open minds in order to promote collaborative attitudes. Intensive co-design is really required in order to reach the development and the goals of the developments of technologies. And so users and technologists should work really together, even from the early phases of the development activities. And this was really achieved in our project. In these complex projects, we need really smart approaches. And so we have demonstrated that how not only let's say the physical and real technology is to be developed, but also the simulation is really a lifesaver in order to anticipate what could be the difficulties and the key point to be taken. We had to dedicate a lot of time to beta test in order to release usable and reliable solution to the end users. And this was crucial in order to obtain good usability results. We had also to involve domain experts. We have not to be presumptuous and to expect to have the knowledge in any part. So involve domain experts is a very important strategy in order to focus on the exact point about the key point in order to promote the proper strategies and also the key performance indicator to be adopted. In terms of technology, we know and we see that how technology runs fast. So we should propose also the ability to fast adapt to the ongoing and new challenges, even during the projects. This could be a challenge for the future Horizon Europe calls, because when we wrote about, let's say, tangible coaches, 5 years ago, no Alexa, no Google Home were present, but now they are completely spread in our houses. And so we have to take into account, even in the future perspective, this kind of different, let's say, speeds between technology, commercial technologies, and research to be developed. And also the fact that technologies is unpredictable. So some of the visionary concepts that we wrote in our proposals 5 years ago and more are now real commercial products. And so we should take into account this kind of activity. Another important lessons learned is related to testing and exploitation. The incremental piloting approach was really relevant because it prevented us in order to have a good balance between recruiting and also the possibility to overcome the difficulties due to the pandemic emergency. The all-in approach that should be, let's say, designed at the beginning in the proposal, in effect, would have been not successful as this one. In order to reach the usability level that we expected and we obtained, it is also needed to underline the important technology support during the installation. This makes the users aware of the system and capable to use by themselves during the pilot. And also the fact that assessing together usability, access, and efficacy may introduce a high complexity in the assessment activities. On the other hand, assess them separately would have required more time during the project, and so these things have to be properly balanced. In conclusion, from the technological perspective of elderly people, we start from a point that 85% of people aged 75 years and over have never been online up to the current statistics in 2018. 18, but this percentage is going to decrease significantly in the next years. So Nestore, as well as the other PM15 projects, investigated the transition from the native analog society towards the digitally native generation, and started to explore the aging tech market that is expected to raise at 30 billions in dollars in the very next years. These techs could really increase the independence and to achieve a higher quality of life. But what we can ask, or we need to ask, even from this, let's say, next generation Europe capability in terms of money and resources for research and infrastructures, is that we need really very good ECT infrastructure in order to make this system to be a success, very integrated, to assure a better interoperability between the systems, and to have a proper policy related to the security of data and related privacy. This is our, let's say, expectation. This is our future, and thank you for the invitation. And I would like to invite you, Panagiotis, and all the project of the PM15 group to write together, according to what our project officer asked Nestore to, a common and joint paper to be published in order to share these lessons learned for the future calls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this impressive ending as well. We have a very useful collaboration with Nestor too. In fact, also in practical things and exchanges of technical aspects. And we really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Giuseppe.
It's a pleasure. It's a really pleasure.
Unless there are questions so far, or any comments from anyone, we shall move on to the next presentation. It's again about the VCare project, and Nicholas Luke will present the interactive coach to fill an important clinical gap and the lessons learned. We can't hear you.
Now you can hear me, right?
Okay, now it's good.
And you see my slides, right?
Yes, excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. And so happy to be with you also today, and congratulations for your great results. As you know, VCare is a bit late for a number of reasons. We not yet to the point where we can present today results, final results at least, but only primary results. We will be most happy to welcome all of you to our final events, which will take place in about 1 year from now. So we have still some time. So VCare is a bit different in a way, because as George has already mentioned, he tries to address not yet the new health paradigm that most of the other projects are trying to address, but an existing gap already in care today, where we see for quite a number of pathologies like stroke, heart attack, or pathologies which deeply affect the cognitive skills of the people, that after discharge from the hospital, there is actually very few support provided to the patients. So we try to address this part. So when the patient is discharged, he will be accompanied by a coach with a specific program, which is, of course, first of all, led by the clinician who's discharging the patient. But, and this is very much the idea, the program will not be static. It will evolve directly with the patient, because he will decide by himself to evolve one way or another, because he will be triggered by the context to evolve, or because the system itself will push him to evolve. The idea behind that is basically to, first of all, improve the quality of life. But of course, here there is also an expectation that it will have an impact on clinical benefits for the patient, and also in terms of treatment optimization. So what are the key building blocks that we have in the project? What is very specific here is that we actually needed, first of all, to develop, you see it on the left side, a pathway services. So that has been quite a work in itself, because it was not existing. We had to completely define what was those clinical pathway for rehabilitation for the diseases we wanted to take care of. So that has been the first thing. And then, of course, as usual in tech projects, you need to make sure that this is correctly understood by the tech people, which was not an easy one, I must say, but it's the usual stuff, you know. We also are needed to use a number of sensors and technologies to analyze the context. And we needed to find the right interface to work with the patient, which had to be also multimodal, just like in other projects. So it can be vocal, it can be visual, but clearly here the interaction takes place mainly through the use of an avatar. And lastly, as you see it, the level of interaction and personalization of service is dependent on two things: on the knowledge integration and learning, which basically interpret the data and provide answers based on rules, and on artificial intelligence. The two are interacting. So that's what is supposed to be. And then we are using a number of services that I will describe. So the main interface here, as you can see, is an avatar, which is basically tablet-based user interface. And the model of VCare is also based on health psychological models and perceived strategies most of the time, so rewarding strategy and so on. But as I said, always leaving the patient himself decide how to use it. So he can carefully put the system to a standby for a while, or he can change some of the settings. There are our number of interactions, both with the healthcare provider when the changes are not compliant with the clinical path, or of course when there are alerting signals. The system needed to be, of course, easy to use, and that's a challenge. As we see, there is also in the virtual coach solutions, we see it more and more. We forget about it. Technology is not cheap. Installing sensors in the home of people, it's a kit is not just a few €100, it's more than that. So we need to address not only the digital divide, but also the social divide in this when implementing this solution. And finally, it should be supported. The people trust the solution, and that's one of the first lessons learned we get, because they know there are people behind it. Because they know that their doctor, the usual doctor, is behind the system. It's not so easy when they are just confronted with a digital solution with no human connection. And that's a very important message, we believe. So keeping the human in the loop will need to be done not only when designing the solution, and we'll come back to that in the co-creation process, but also in implementing it. So the kind of data services, as you can see, where we have 10 data services, which focus on a number of things, on the body position, on the collection of parameters, the fall detection, but also the physical and physical activities, and the monitoring of social interaction or emotions, which is also, we discover something quite important but challenging to have emotion interacting with a coach. And finally, we're on the sleep quality. So that's the two type of data that we collect. We have three supporting services, which basically interact with the context integration, the kind of weather in order to provide the support activities, the agenda, and as I said already, the standby. And this is then embedded in two specific services. Of course, the first one in the list is the physical training, because they're the first priority of the clinician most of the time. But as you can see there, we also try to empower and to motivate the patient. So he needs to be informed constantly about the status of his rehabilitation and how he progresses. And we have also a number of games for cognitive training. We developed a number, quite an important number of e-learning completely adapted to each pathology. We also developed a number of notifications which can be parametered by the patient in order not to be too invasive, but still efficient. We're using questionnaires to collect also more subjective data. We didn't succeed. Well, we can't rely, just to be frank, today only on data collected by the sensors or by the system itself. We need absolutely to keep, at least for a while, I think, using a traditional way of collecting data. And then the switch and following therapy is also avatar based. As I said, we rely on two things: expert rules, and that has been challenging also. It looks easy, but actually no, there was once again no formal decision on how far can a patient go in terms of physical rehabilitation after such a disease and after such and so on time. So one of the lesson that we have is that basically when you use expert rules and smart agents, you actually cannot expect to fully substitute for a clinician decision. And I'm not speaking here about the MDR or AI regulation. I'm speaking about just the fact that the system cannot take risk beyond a certain level. So that means that a decision that the clinician would take with this Hippocrates oath in mind, such a system would probably not take it the same way. Whatever the pertinence and the way we have been training the algorithm and so on, that's a limitation. And that's true for expert rules when we define thresholds. And that's certainly true also for the smart agent which interacts with the patient. So that's why we need, once again, to see the system at a certain point as a support, but not as a substitute to any traditional clinical setting. Oops. So we are now entering, we have been entering into the living lab phase in VCare since a few months as well. Unfortunately, due to the COVID, I mean, you've been very unlucky in many projects because you've been confronted with the COVID during the pilot. Actually, we've been confronted with the COVID as early as during the technical labs, which has been also very challenging because we have actually 4 technical partners which need to collaborate, and each of them is fundamental. And that's also very challenging to have 4 technical partners working together into an integrated system in COVID times. Still, we made it to that point, and we are now in the living lab. And for the living lab, as I said, we had to reconstitute a fully controlled environment, but home-like in the different clinical settings in Spain, in the Basque Country, in Italy, in Milano, and in Romania, in Bucharest, for the Trim disease. And that's what we have been doing. So we are testing now all the activities one by one before entering the pilot phase. And that's the way we actually try to do it, as you can see here. And what you see here on the upper left is the clinical pathway, where for one specific patient, the clinician decides which kind of pathway template is adapted And thus you see that here we deal with pain, with strength reduction, balance impairment, joint limitation. And then once again, we have a pathway for each pathway indication. We have a number of activities which we're going to be prescribed, but also with a certain routine, meaning every day or every week or when the patient wants or whatsoever. And thus begins the interaction. So in this living lab, we are testing all these activities one by one, and very much like has been explained for Captain, in a very sprint way, at least we try to do so. But actually it takes more time than we had thought. So we will extend it a little bit more, the time for living lab, in order to be sure that when we go to the pilot phase, we really will have solved all the key usability issue. And as you can see, this is now the plan to have the living lab ending now after the summer, and or even in October, and then having the last 6 months fully the pilots implemented for 80 patients. And we have also one in Denmark, so in 4 locations for the 3 main clinical use cases. And then the patient will test all activities at home. So we will install all the sensors, and they will be fully independent, and they will fully interact with the system during 6 months. So I think the results will be quite interesting. There are a number of challenges, and I will end with this, in the sense that we will have defined, hopefully, our minimum viable product by the end of the living lab. We will need at this stage to make sure that the aspects, because we are concerned, as George mentioned, by the AI and the MDR regulation quite directly. So we need to identify which aspects at the design phase needed to be taken into consideration. We need to also clearly define all the support services which are needed for the pilots. I think just not leaving the patient alone. There's a lot of backup to be organized in order to provide the needed support to the patient. And this we will be very happy to tell you more about it next year during our final event. So yeah, almost welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was really great to see all these developments in this project. Are there any questions? It's important to move forward with all these lessons, because I think it's the way to move forward is to learn from each other's experiences. So thank you once again for this wonderful presentation. And we move to another project, which is now a connection between the European Union and Japan, a project called eVita. And Lawrence Gramrat will talk about the Smart Aging Research Center at Tohoku University in Japan and the eVita project.
Yes, hello everybody, and I feel like on big events where you say all was said already, but not by everybody, because we are pretty much doing similar things, and I've heard so many aspects already that we are also covering. But maybe the special thing is, of course, the combination with Japan. I'm living here already 20 years, and since 2 months now I'm at the Tohoku University. So what is special about Japan? Japan is the world's most aging society, and if you look at the graph here, these are different European countries, and this is Japan, and you can see that Japan is really aging faster than all the other European countries, and that's actually even compared to most countries of the world. And you see here the aging pyramid in 1950, and here you see in 2055. So it's really a big change, and many things that maybe European countries are experiencing are already happening in Japan. Tohoku University is located in Sendai. It's about 300 kilometers north of Tokyo, and it's one of the top 3 universities, designated national universities, besides Tokyo University, Kyoto, and here in Tohoku University. The Institute of Development, Aging and Cancer was established already in 1941. And in 2006, the area of smart aging was introduced. And 2017, actually, the Smart Aging Research Center was founded. And the complex is here, this 4 buildings. So we have here magnet resonance tomographs where we can do this brain science part. And we have one of the biggest brain science databases. And here on the right side, you see the new building. So we look into many things: aging science, brain science, cognitive science, and dementia. So how to prevent dementia, actually. So we are running the Japanese part of the EVITA project that just started in January. So we cannot tell any results yet, but just I want to describe what we are doing. We have 22 partners, 11 from different European countries. You see France, Belgium, Italy, and also Germany. And we have 11 partners in Japan. So universities, but also aging facilities, as well as device makers. The idea is current systems are not easy to use by elderly people, and we want to look actually into cognition, physical activity, mobility, mood, social interaction, leisure, and spirituality, because all this actually influences your well-being and the way you are aging, and that you can still age well and without dementia. So this virtual coach we are developing will actually use a lot of data and interact through different objects. I will show them later. We also have living environments, living labs, but we also have to look into international standardization, because collecting data is also a question of whom the data belongs to and how we can secure the data. What do you need when you are old to be happy and well? Of course, you have to be autonomous. You need security, stimulation, relatedness, popularity, and meaning. And we are trying to look at those parts. And here is the scheme how we work. We have the elderly person here. We have our virtual coach, and there is a direct interaction between both, but also the virtual coach actually uses data from smart living environment and can, for example, look at the gesture or the movement of the people and try to interpret this data, and then maybe also give some advice to the community support. And through that, we hope that we can keep people well in even higher age. These are the different devices we use. So we also have a hologram here. It's a company Gatebox that is also a member. So this interacts with you. It can detect if you are coming. We have robots. We have, this is a brain analyzer that can analyze your brain function. but we also have spiritual devices like this Daruma. It's more Japanese oriented, or this Christian device, as well as we use Androids and a lot of sensor systems. So finally, the adult actually has to use and enjoy these devices. The older adult has to learn and do meaningful activities. And on the other hand, we have the different stakeholders. We have the industry, we have community, we have university, and they are all interwoven. So we will also see that older adults can contribute to the community, they can contribute to education, and they can, of course, learn, but they also can teach, and the same with industry. So we are working on the interaction of all the different stakeholders. So that's a very brief presentation, and I'm very happy also if anybody of you is interested in looking into Japan. We are happy to collaborate also internationally, not only in this EVITA project, but also bilaterally with interested organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think everyone would be interested in following the EVITA project developments and advances over the next few years, because I think it started later as well. So I think we will all be interested to see how much what we have achieved can be, of course, expanded or even tested, or at least handshake with the experiences that we have so that we achieve better things. So thank you very much for demonstrating the project activities so far. And thank you for the availability for the collaboration.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So we'll move on with a short sort of panel discussion. We have, as you know, in all projects, in Captain, we had our own advisory board as well. And I guess occasionally you need these people, and we are thankful to a bunch of people that were available during this journey to be available for questioning, to be available for resolving issues that we had, for being advisors. And we have invited 3 of these people to be with us today. Unfortunately, I cannot see who had to disappear. Yes, Dokimos?
Yes, and Eva disconnected, but she will connect back in 2 minutes.
Okay, so let me start then with our third panelist, who is Professor Dimitris Koutsouris, who is with me live here. We have been participating in this together today, and he was kind enough to join us live, given the vaccination benefits. So I'd like to ask him in what sense he sees the future of the healthcare technologies in assisting vulnerable populations like the most aged or the older adults, people with the specific chronic diseases, etc., given the achievements of Captain and similar projects that he has seen today.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, Panos and Zokimos, for the invitation to be member of the advisory board of the Captain and to close the panel discussion today. I want to say that the idea of Captain Coach was an initiative really beyond the time, and also the whole PM15 idea, the projects, they saw the future of the 2020, Health 2020, the horizon of the next step of the European community. Christophe, I don't know if he is here, but in reality, the new course, they want and they talk about staying healthy in a rapidly changing society, living and working in a health-promoting environment, tackling disease with new technologies, medicine innovation and globally competitive healthy industry, and ensuring access to innovative, sustainable, and high-quality healthcare. All this kind of destination of the new course, they have one common. They need and they want and they ask clinical validation. That I think it happened because I can say I can say between quotes that we open the road, this kind of the projects like Captain Coach, Vital, Hollow Balance, and all the other projects. They open the road that we don't need just technology, but we need also applied technology and validation, clinical validation. Roadmap to a personalized medicine at the end. So I'm very happy that the conclusion of most of these projects, and special for the captain, the coach of captain, that they finalized to some kind of concrete results and some kind of indices that they show this road. Thank you. Maybe some questions.
Thank you, Dimitris. Maybe there are any questions that anyone wants to address at this point. I think Dimitris emphasized the flexibility, but also the duties that we have in having developed technologies that can coach people, especially the vulnerable populations, and they have achieved some kind of products at the end of the day. That is important that these products are becoming validated at a clinical level if they address issues of health. At the moment, we address health as a kind of a well-being kind of state, but not health in a real sense, because then you need clinical validation, so to say. And then the next step is there. The great challenge, as Dimitris explained, is to address the different stages of these clinical validations for all these different products so that they can do different things. A lot of funding opportunities, as he explained, in the Horizon Europe program, which starts with first calls.
21 September. You are very happy, eh?
21st of September, which is not too far away, given the summer holidays and all the efforts that we have in closing the projects, etc. But the challenge is there, obviously. Evdokimos?
Yeah, if I can comment, as Professor Koutsouri said, actually this call was kind of interesting because the European Commission wanted to see some highly innovative, risky ideas so they can get to proof of concepts, actually, not that much in the clinical validation, in order to get an idea of what the future could be, or what would be the means for the future where clinical assessment could take place. So I would like now to ask Professor Kehaya from McGill to tell us a little bit how important the co-creation is when you try highly innovative, high-risky ideas in the domain of health.
Hello, thank you for this amazing meeting that I attended, also for the journey. If I may, I would like to say just a few words about the experience, having experienced a lived experience of Captain during the annual Open Living Lab Days, and also just following along. I am impressed by the synergy, the complementarity of the teams.
Professor Kehaya, so you speak English, because I was 20 years in France, so vive le Québec, there.
bien sûr, vive le Québec.
Vive le Québec français.
Français.
C'est De Gaulle qui l'a dit ça, pas moi.
Or as they would say, vive le Québec libre, which no longer actually, it's not as a logo that's used as much.
Okay, sorry for interrupting.
Thank you.
I couldn't resist.
Of course, I understand. No, this is fine. So yes, speaking of the project, as I said, the leadership has been exemplary. Earlier, we heard from when we heard from the Irish partner. I'm sorry, I don't recall her name, but she spoke about the participatory type of approach, the living lab approach, and I can tell you that I myself experienced the beauty of this approach in real life in Thessaloniki, and so this has been quite a journey for all of you, a journey from which we get to benefit. Pano, you just spoke about proof of concepts, or Evdokimos spoke about proof of concepts and innovative ideas, indeed. And in fact, during the meeting, I was kind of texting Evdokimos saying, when can we actually have here in Canada the captain tools and captain coach, and believe me, it's not as if there's no innovation. There's lots of innovation in Quebec and in Canada, but the way you've done it is new, it's innovative, it's person-centered, and this is exactly what we need. So I think it's wonderful that you actually now are at the stage of deploying these tools and programs to others, so that we can move into clinical settings, into homes, we can move into real life environments and try out these piloted tools and interventions around the globe. I think that sums it up. I'm very excited actually and look forward to the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. I think you've summarized it properly, and I think if I was going to reply to your question, when is it available to travel across the Atlantic? When is it, Evdokimos? I think tomorrow.
Right.
It could be.
Yes,
Depends on the courier.
we are fortunate enough to be working together, and it's in this way that we actually get to move forward that much faster for the benefit of everybody. So yes, that's wonderful. Good.
Thank you very much. I think it's I'll just briefly say that there are more opportunities, of course, across our way to Canada, and in one of the projects that we have with them, we'll try to exploit the opportunities and test further tools like these and more innovative tools in areas like rehabilitation, etc. Projects like the Vitalize project that we've started a couple of months ago will give us the space and the flexibility we want to test further these products that have been developed.
Indeed. So thank you and merci beaucoup.
De rien. Vous n'avez pas l'accent québécois de toute façon.
Non, parce que j'ai appris le français en Grèce.
Voilà, c'est ça. Alors.
It sounds Greek to us.
Maria, any comment from your side?
Actually, it's now the end, and it's been a very nice journey. I would like also to thank our officer for the support, our advisory board for being there with us, and mostly the team in the Aristotle University, which has been a great team. We enjoyed working together. We spent a lot of time in designing all these activities with our community, and a big thanks to everyone.
Despina?
Who Despina?
Either of you. I don't know if you want to take a family photo or something. Okay. So please, anyone that wants, and they can switch on their cameras, they can do that, and we can have a family picture celebrating the end of the projects.
Okay, I can take the family photo. So three, two, one. And just a second, one more, because we are too many people. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Great.
Great. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. We have an active website and the newsletter that will be coming over the next few weeks. And we have enjoyed exchanging these experiences of the achievements of these projects with you. And we'll be back with more news soon, we promise. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.